If you think volcanic eruptions are terrifying, just wait until you hear about this. What happens when a volcano erupts, but instead of lava, it shoots a gigantic tsunami into the air? And what if this happens unexpectedly, with almost no warning, right off the coast of your city? Well, it might happen sooner than you think. It's me, and you're watching this channel. Join me today as we uncover an eruption so big it could make giant waves hundreds of meters tall, crash into coastal cities, and even trigger earthquakes. This is our worst nightmare. It would be devastating, but luckily it's also very unlikely to happen anytime soon. Our cities have been built on land that was once underwater. Millions of years ago, volcanoes beneath the ocean created mountain chains known as seamounts. Some are over 2,000 meters high, and many more are larger still. But because they're underwater, we don't notice them. We don't feel their presence as they silently loom beneath us. However, they are not inactive. Over the last 14,000 years, there have been 30 large volcanic eruptions on seamounts in the Atlantic Ocean alone. In July 2022, another eruption occurred in the Indian Ocean, where magma burst through the ocean floor, creating a new island over the course of just 3 weeks. It may seem distant, but these events are closer than you might think. In fact, there's a good chance that one of these seamounts is lurking beneath your own city. If you live anywhere near a coastline, there's at least a small chance that you're living on top of a hidden volcano. This includes Los Angeles, New York, Sydney, Tokyo, and London, all of which lie on seamount chains that formed from ancient volcanic eruptions. What's more, many of these seamounts aren't just relics of the past. They're home to active magma chambers that continue to rumble beneath the waves. So it's only a matter of time before one of them blows its top. But how dangerous would such an eruption really be? To answer that question, scientists are studying an area known as the Shatsky Rise. This vast collection of submerged volcanoes stretches over 100,000 square kilometers of the northwest Pacific Ocean. As recently as 14,000 years ago, it was the site of one of the largest volcanic eruptions in history. The force of the blast was so great that it sent a wall of water 100 meters high crashing out into the ocean. It raced across the waves at a speed of over 800 kilometers per hour, causing total devastation in its wake. Luckily, this disaster only affected uninhabited islands, but it could easily have struck a major city and caused catastrophic damage. If something similar were to occur today, it could put millions of lives at risk. But it's not just tsunamis that we need to worry about. The force of the eruption itself could cause the seamount to collapse. As it crumbles, it could plunge into the ocean and trigger a massive landslide. This landslide would race across the seafloor, picking up speed as it went. Eventually, it would hit the continental slope, the relatively flat surface that marks the edge of the continent. At this point, it would slow down dramatically. But depending on its size, it could still travel for hundreds of kilometers before finally coming to rest. And the danger doesn't end there. Underwater landslides can generate giant waves that crash up onto the shore. These waves can reach heights of up to 30 meters, causing widespread devastation. They can also trigger earthquakes that shake the surrounding region. So it's clear that these seamounts are a serious threat. But how worried should we really be? Unfortunately, there's a lot that we still don't know. To better understand the risks, scientists are turning to computer models. By simulating different scenarios on a computer, they can see how an eruption might play out under various conditions. For example, they can change the size of the eruption, the angle of the seamount, and the depth of the water to see how each factor affects the outcome. These models are constantly being improved as scientists learn more about seamount eruptions. For example, in 2021, researchers from the University of Southampton developed a new way to model tsunamis generated by submarine landslides. Their model took into account the movement of the landslide as well as the shape of the seafloor. This allowed them to create more accurate simulations of how the tsunami would behave. Another team of scientists has created a model that simulates the entire process from the initial eruption to the eventual impact on the coast. This model takes into account factors such as the strength of the earthquake, the amount of magma released, and the depth of the seamount. Unfortunately, despite all of these efforts, there's still a lot that we don't know about seamount eruptions. This is partly because they're so rare that we simply haven't collected enough data to develop a complete picture. But it's also because they're so complex that even the best computer models can only provide a simplified representation of what actually happens. Despite these challenges, scientists are making progress. And as they learn more about seamount eruptions, they'll be able to provide more accurate assessments of the risks they pose to coastal communities. But while scientists work to better understand these dangers, city planners must take steps to protect coastal residents. Sea level rise caused by climate change is already making many coastal cities more vulnerable to flooding. This means that the risk of damage from seamount-generated tsunamis is greater than ever. Luckily, there are things that can be done to mitigate the risk. For example, building codes can be strengthened to make sure that buildings are able to withstand the force of a tsunami. Coastal defenses such as seawalls and breakwaters can also help to protect against the impact of giant waves. But perhaps most importantly, residents need to be educated about the risks they face and what to do in the event of an eruption. This includes knowing what to do if a tsunami warning is issued, having a plan in place for evacuating the city, and being prepared to take cover in the event of an earthquake. But what if we're hit by a tsunami without any warning? Well, that's possible, but it's not likely. Tsunamis generated by seamount eruptions typically travel very quickly and strike with little or no warning. However, there are sometimes other signs that an eruption is imminent, such as the appearance of new cracks in the seafloor or an increase in seismic activity. If any of these signs are detected, authorities could issue a tsunami warning, and residents would have a few hours to get to safety. If you feel an earthquake that seems particularly strong, head to higher ground immediately. If you live near the coast and can see that the water has receded, run away fast. If you hear a loud roar that seems to be coming from the ocean, don't hesitate to get to safety. If you find yourself outside when a tsunami hits, try to move to higher ground as quickly as possible. If you're driving, pull over and park your car. Then move to higher ground away from the coast. If you're at home, turn on the television and radio to a local station to find out if there's a tsunami warning. If there is, follow the instructions of local authorities. While the risk of a tsunami hitting your city might seem small, it's important to be prepared just in case. After all, it's better to be safe than sorry. So there you have it. While the risk of a seamount eruption occurring beneath your city might seem small, it's important to remember that these events are rare precisely because we can't predict when they'll occur. That means that we don't know whether the next one will happen tomorrow or 10,000 years from now. All we know is that it will happen again. When it does, it could cause devastation on a scale that we've never seen before. That's why it's so important that we continue to study these eruptions and take steps to protect ourselves against the risks they pose. Who knows when the next one will happen? But when it does, we need to be ready. So, do you think you'd be able to survive a tsunami? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. Until next time,